I know I told you hell pigs were next. They still are. That video is finished and it's coming right after this one. But something got bumped up the schedule because I couldn't sit on this story any longer. And once you hear it, I think you'll understand why. For exactly 100 years, the entire proof that this animal existed at all came from inside the stomach of something else. Not a skeleton, not a shell. Two torn-off arms, partially digested, recovered from a sperm whale that something enormous had clearly fought before it died. That's how the colossal squid entered the scientific record, as evidence of a battle nobody had witnessed, pulled out of the belly of the loser. And for the next 100 years, almost nothing about that changed. This is the story of the heaviest invertebrate ever weighed by human hands. An animal with the largest eyes in the entire animal kingdom. Built with a weapon its far more famous cousin doesn't even have. And an animal that, as of a few months before this video, had still never once been filmed alive as a full-grown adult. Anywhere, by anyone, in the entire history of underwater exploration. The story begins in the winter of 1924 into 1925, in the freezing waters near the Ross Sea, off Antarctica, when whalers processing a sperm whale found something unusual in its stomach. Two crowns of arms, the muscular bases where a squid's arms meet its body, torn loose and clearly not belonging to any squid species known to science at the time. The remains were passed along to a British zoologist named Guy Coburn Robson, who examined them and, in 1925, formally described an entirely new species based on nothing but those two fragments. He named it Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni, honoring a man named E. Hamilton, who had made the initial discovery, and the species picked up a far more evocative common name almost immediately, the colossal squid. Think about what that actually means for a second. An entire species, one that would eventually turn out to be among the largest invertebrates alive on the planet, was scientifically confirmed to exist not because anyone had ever seen the whole animal, but because a predator had eaten part of it, and the leftovers were distinctive enough to prove something new was out there. That's not usually how you get to meet the biggest animals in a given group. Usually, it's the other way around. In this case, humanity met the colossal squid the same way you might learn a bear lives in the woods behind your house, by finding a very large, very strange piece of fur in something else's den. For most of the 20th century after that, the colossal squid barely got more real than it had been in 1925. This isn't an animal that lives somewhere convenient. It occupies the frigid, pitch-black waters of the Southern Ocean, largely around Antarctica, at depths that routinely run into the hundreds of meters and likely deeper for the largest individuals, in one of the most remote, least visited marine environments on the planet. Confirmed specimens trickled in over the decades, almost always the same way the original discovery happened, either as damaged remains recovered from the stomachs of sperm whales, or as battered, often already dying individuals accidentally hauled up by longline fishing vessels, targeting Antarctic toothfish in the Ross Sea. Nobody was finding these animals on purpose. Nobody was choosing to go looking for a colossal squid and succeeding. Every single piece of evidence that trickled in for most of a century arrived essentially by accident, torn loose from an animal that was either already dead, already dying, or already digested. What those scattered fragments did let researchers piece together, slowly, was just how strange and specifically over-engineered this animal actually is. And it starts with a detail that genuinely sets it apart from its more famous relative. Most people, when they picture a legendary giant squid from the deep ocean, are picturing Invertebrate, the giant squid, the one behind centuries of sailor stories, and, eventually, its own confirmed video footage back in the 2000s. The colossal squid is a different genus entirely, generally shorter in overall body length, but significantly heavier and bulkier, and armed in a way the giant squid simply isn't. A giant squid's arms and tentacles are lined mostly with suckers, each one ringed with small, fixed teeth. A colossal squid's two longer feeding tentacles end in wide clubs armed with roughly 25 hooks, arranged in rows, and unlike almost anything else in the cephalopod world, a meaningful portion of those hooks can actually rotate, swiveling on a joint the way a grappling hook rotates on a chain, some of them capable of turning through a wide arc rather than staying fixed in one position. Picture something less like a tentacle covered in suction cups, and more like a tentacle covered in small, swiveling, three-pronged blades, built specifically to snag onto something moving and refuse to let go, no matter how hard it thrashes. Whatever this animal grabs in total darkness, half a kilometer or more beneath the surface, is not getting a clean, quiet escape. Then there are the eyes, and this is the detail that tends to stop people cold once they actually see the scale of it. Colossal squid eyes measure roughly 25 centimeters across, close to the size of a full soccer ball, and they hold the record as the largest eyes documented anywhere in the animal kingdom, living or extinct. For comparison, a blue whale, the largest animal that has ever lived on this planet by a wide margin, has eyes only a fraction of that size. Bigger body, dramatically smaller eyes, because a blue whale doesn't need to resolve fine detail in absolute darkness the way a deep-sea hunter does. Eyes that large exist for exactly one reason at these depths, gathering every last available photon in an environment with essentially no sunlight. And researchers studying the colossal squid's biology have proposed that eyes this size may be specifically tuned to detect something most predators never have to worry about: the disturbance created by an approaching sperm whale itself, which can trigger surrounding bioluminescent plankton to flash as it swims through them, giving a colossal squid an early warning glow in the dark, precious extra seconds of notice, before one of the only predators large enough to actually kill it arrives. And that predator relationship deserves its own moment because it's the closest thing this story has to an actual eyewitness account, even though no human eyewitness is involved. Sperm whales hunting in the Southern Ocean are the colossal squid's primary natural predator, diving deep into the animal's own dark territory to find it, and the physical evidence of just how violent that encounter can get is written directly onto the whales themselves. Researchers studying sperm whale skin in these waters have documented circular scarring patterns, sucker marks, and in some cases, marks consistent with those distinctive rotating hooks, evidence of squid that fought back hard enough to leave lasting damage on an animal that can weigh over 40 tons. A sperm whale usually wins that fight, obviously, or there wouldn't be whales swimming around with scars to study. But usually isn't always, and the scars themselves are proof that this is a genuine fight, not a simple meal. Every single time it happens in the deep, dark water where nobody's around to watch it. And here's the part that should really recalibrate how rare you think this animal actually is. Studies analyzing the beaks recovered from Southern Ocean sperm whale stomachs, the one hard part of a squid that survives digestion, have found colossal squid beaks turning up so frequently that some researchers consider this species to make up the single largest share, by total estimated mass, of the sperm whale diet in Antarctic waters. Which means an animal that has been directly observed alive by humans exactly 0 times as a full adult in 100 years of looking might simultaneously be one of the most abundant large predators in the entire Southern Ocean, just successfully invisible to us the entire time, while apparently being on the menu constantly for the one predator that actually can find it. The single best physical specimen anyone has ever gotten their hands on came in 2007, and it's worth walking through exactly how it happened, because it captures just how much luck is involved in ever getting a good look at this animal at all. A New Zealand fishing vessel, the San Aspiring, was working long lines for Antarctic toothfish in the Ross Sea when the crew realized a colossal squid was attacking a hooked toothfish as it was being reeled in, essentially trying to steal an easy meal off the line. The crew managed to bring the squid up along with its catch, and what they hauled onto the deck weighed in at approximately 495 kilograms, close to 1,100 pounds, making it, at the time and still today, the heaviest invertebrate animal ever accurately weighed by human hands. It was preserved and eventually transported to the Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa, where it was given the Maori name Te Weke, and remains on public display, thawed, studied, and photographed in exhaustive detail. An actual, tangible, weighable body finally attached to a species that had spent most of the 20th century existing as scattered fragments and educated guesswork. Even with a specimen that completes sitting in a museum, the question of exactly how big this species can actually get remains stubbornly unresolved, and the reason comes down to a frustrating detail about which body parts tend to survive long enough to be measured. What researchers can measure reliably is mantle length, the length of the squid's main tubular body, excluding the head, arms, and the 2 long feeding tentacles. Total length estimates, the number that actually captures how far this animal could reach from tail to tentacle tip, requires scaling up from that mantle measurement using assumptions about arm and tentacle proportions, and those proportions are exactly the part of the animal that tends to go missing before a specimen ever reaches a scientist. Tentacles get bitten off during a whale's attack. They tear away in fishing gear. They're often the first thing lost, whether the squid is losing a fight for its life against a sperm whale or simply being hauled up on a hook meant for something else entirely. Early 20th century estimates, extrapolating from fragmentary evidence, floated total lengths as extreme as 12 to 14 meters, numbers that made it into popular science writing for decades. More recent, more conservative analyses have pulled that ceiling down considerably, but even the current, more careful estimates still leave real uncertainty at the top end, because the specimens large enough to answer the question with confidence are, almost by definition, exactly the ones that keep arriving without their tentacles attached. There's one more strange biological detail worth knowing before we get to how this story stands as of right now, because it explains why nobody's ever going to be tempted to serve this animal for dinner. Like a number of other deep-sea squid species, the colossal squid maintains buoyancy in the water column, using a solution of ammonium chloride stored throughout much of its tissue, essentially floating itself using chemically light fluid, instead of relying purely on muscle and fat, the way many other marine animals do. It's an elegant, low-energy solution to staying suspended at depth without constantly swimming to avoid sinking. It also means the flesh of a colossal squid reportedly carries a strong ammonia taste and smell, which is very likely part of why, despite being the heaviest invertebrate on the planet and turning up as accidental bycatch on toothfish boats with some regularity, this is not an animal that has ever been fished commercially for food. Even the fishing industry, which will happily commodify nearly anything that comes up in a net, has largely left the colossal squid alone, not out of any conservation instinct, but because it apparently tastes the way it sounds like it should taste. Which finally brings us to March of 2025, and the moment that actually changes the ending of this story, at least a little. A team aboard a Schmidt Ocean Institute research vessel, working an expedition near the South Sandwich Islands in the South Atlantic, was operating a remotely piloted submersible called Bastion at a depth of around 600 meters when something drifted into view on camera. A small, pale, almost glass-like animal, its internal organs faintly visible through translucent tissue, hanging motionless in the beam of the ROV's lights. It was a colossal squid, roughly 30 centimeters long, a juvenile, and it was, as confirmed by researchers including cephalopod expert Dr. Kat Bolstad of the Auckland University of Technology, the first confirmed video footage of a live colossal squid ever recorded in its natural deep-sea habitat, and the entire 100-year history of the species being known to science. Dr. Bolstad's own reaction on record called the sighting both exciting and humbling, noting that this tiny, ghostly animal drifting through the dark had absolutely no idea humans existed at all, let alone that it had just become part of a 100-year-old scientific milestone. Adult colossal squid, previously photographed only as dying or dead specimens hauled onto the decks of fishing boats, had still, even after this landmark sighting, never once been observed alive in their own environment, at anything close to their full potential size. The century-long gap didn't fully close in 2025. It cracked open by exactly one small, harmless-looking juvenile, drifting past a robot's camera in the freezing dark, and then it closed right back up again. So here's where the colossal squid actually sits today, as accurately as anyone can currently describe it. An animal first proven to exist by pieces recovered from a predator's stomach, armed with rotating hooks that its more famous cousin doesn't have, carrying the largest eyes ever measured on any animal, alive or extinct, quite possibly evolved specifically to spot the one hunter capable of killing it before that hunter arrives, weighed once definitively at nearly 500 kilograms, and still argued over every time anyone tries to guess how much bigger the ones nobody has ever weighed might actually get. Possibly one of the single most abundant large predators in the entire Southern Ocean, by total biomass, based on how often its beak turns up in a whale's stomach, and simultaneously one of the least seen animals of its size on the planet. And as of a video filmed in March of 2025, we have now watched exactly one of them, alive, in the wild, for the very first time in 100 years of trying, and it was a 30-centimeter juvenile that had no idea it was making history. The adults, the ones capable of scarring a 40-ton sperm whale badly enough to leave a lifetime of marks, are still down there right now. Completely unfilmed, completely unphotographed while alive, doing whatever it is they actually do in the dark. And for the moment, that part of the story still belongs entirely to them. Alright, Hell Pigs are genuinely next, I promise. The Entelodon script is locked and ready to go. But I wanted to plant a flag here too, because I'm going to start bringing you more of these. The deep sea and insect stories that make your skin crawl a little, whether you can explain why or not, mixed in alongside the dinosaur deep dives going forward. Let me know in the comments if you want more ocean nightmares like this one. Tell me which deep sea or creepy crawly animal you want cataloged next, and subscribe to Claw Catalog, because between the Hell Pigs and whatever's living in the trenches, there's a lot more coming.